Making Marriage Work, Avoiding the Pitfalls and Achieving Success by Rob Pascale and Louis H. Primavera. Narrated by Stephen R. Thorne. Chapter 1. Introduction. Mark and Judy had been married about 18 years and wanted to find out if counseling could improve their marriage. During the initial sessions, I asked a lot of questions about their relationship to uncover what might be at the heart of their issues. As we met over the following weeks, both claimed there wasn't a specific problem that kept cropping up. In fact, they said they almost never argued. However, they also rarely engaged in any forms of intimacy. Their broader issues, that is, what was causing their lack of intimacy, remained very much under the surface. One day, Mark arrived before Judy and told me that going to therapy was Judy's idea. From his perspective, he was just going through the motions. He already had a girlfriend and was really just working out the best time to leave. He believed his marriage was too far gone, and regardless, he had no interest in fixing it. Therapy, for him, was a way to end their relationship, not a way to repair it. Judy, on the other hand, was committed to turning things around and was completely unaware of Mark's intentions. A lot of couples come to marriage counselors to get permission to leave. One or the other has already made up their minds before the first session, and going to therapy makes it look as though they tried, but it's a way to alleviate their guilt. What's truly unfortunate is that many of their problems could have been solved, and if they don't try, they might end up facing many of the same issues in future relationships. Marriage as an institution seems to be at risk, or at least that's what recent statistics suggest. At present, somewhere between 35% and 50% of marriages are expected to end in divorce at some point, and only about 7 out of 10 couples will make it to their 10th anniversary. Additionally, young people are not flocking to marriage the way they used to. While getting married in the past was something of a rite of passage into adulthood, people today are waiting longer to get married. More couples also seem to regard living together outside of wedlock as a better way to go, possibly because it's less complicated, less restricting, or just less scary because the door is always a little open. For some contemplating marriage, such statistics and social trends can be downright depressing. They suggest that despite how hard we worked to find the right person, we don't have a very good chance of long-term success. Others might take a more cynical perspective. Having grown up with friends living in single-parent households or experiencing that arrangement themselves, they may expect their own marriages to fail. Either way, it's not unreasonable to question whether taking that step makes sense. Maybe the institution is obsolete and no longer relevant to the way we live now. That, of course, is not the case. Being married is still how people prefer to live, and within all cultures, it's one of the most valued institutions. Most of us eventually end up married at least once in our lifetimes, and rare is the totally committed bachelor or bachelorette. Its predominance in our individual and social psyches is demonstrated by how much press the subject receives. As of this writing, an online search of library abstracts cites more than 40,000 specific scientific articles just from the fields of psychology and sociology, and the Amazon.com website lists more than 9,000 books on how to make your marriage better. But if marriage is so cherished and so culturally ingrained, why are couples more likely today to end up divorced? From our perspective, what the statistics actually reveal is not that marriage isn't valued, but that it's much harder today to keep one intact. There's evidence, for example, that relationships have more conflicts nowadays. That's not to say that marriages were happier years ago. The truth is there was probably a lot of suffering in silence. Yet these couples stayed married, mostly because there wasn't much choice if you wanted to be accepted in the community. However, those in the baby boomer and later generations have had to marry in the face of social changes that have made it much easier to walk away. One factor that has worked against the stability of the institution is the adoption of no-fault laws in the late 1960s. As a result of such legislation, couples no longer need to explain why they are divorcing. A marriage can be dissolved for any reason or no reason at all. However, as an unintended consequence, the government has actually helped to legitimize divorce. These laws are an acknowledgement by the state that breaking up a marriage is acceptable, and the reasons for doing so is nobody's business. In effect, they have removed the negative stigma, so couples can split up and still retain their standing in the community. Then there's the women's movement. Women now have more and better employment opportunities and are more in control of their own lives. Although their salaries lag behind those of men, a job still provides them with a good amount of independence, and they no longer require a husband for financial security. So they can now wait longer to get married and don't have to stay married if they're not satisfied with their partner. Without feeling trapped in bad marriages, women may have less of a need to work through marital problems because they're better equipped to make it on their own. Along with greater equality, the roles held by men and women are no longer clearly delineated. As a result, there's been a reduction in interdependency. Before the 1960s, husbands and wives held complementary roles. One was the breadwinner, providing safety and financial security for the family. The other was responsible for maintaining the home, raising the children, and fulfilling other social and family duties. Because each partner filled a specific and highly defined role, couples had functionally different and very useful reasons for staying together. In contrast, today there's a good deal of overlap in terms of who brings home the bacon and who manages the household. The blurring of roles means each partner doesn't provide to the other a unique set of benefits that they did in past generations, which weakens the need to stay together. The movement toward gender equality has also affected the balance of power within marriages. Because power is a zero-sum game, an increase in status for women means there's an equivalent loss of status for men. Prior to the 1960s, men held the power in marriage. They had a housekeeper, a cook, a regular sex partner, and freedom of movement, all with little or no responsibility inside the home. Although men still get more out of marriage than they give, they're not quite the kings of their castles as they used to be. In some marriages, there can actually be an ongoing power struggle, as men strive for control and their wives fight for equality. The point here is that for men, the loss of much of their status may have made starting or staying in a marriage less attractive. Women's entry into the job market has affected men in other ways. They've added another layer of competition for jobs, thereby reducing men's career opportunities and earning potential. Furthermore, while men still don't carry an equal load at home, they do more today than did husbands in the past. Having to dedicate more time to household maintenance may have forced some men to focus less exclusively on their careers, and that may have slowed or limited their ability for advancement. With their weakened status and increased home responsibilities, both men and women might not see marriage as advantageous in today's world. More liberal attitudes towards sex may also have chipped away at marriage. While only about 30% of adults felt premarital sex was acceptable in the 1950s, that percentage has grown to about 75% today. As it is no longer a prerequisite for sex, marriage has lost one of its more popular and exclusive benefits. There's also been a change in attitudes toward out-of-wedlock births. It's much more acceptable now to have children without being married, even without a live-in partner. More than 40% of all births in the United States in 2007 were outside of marriage, compared to less than 5% in 1950. The estimates are that more than half of all children today will spend their formative years moving in and out of different households and living in different kinds of family structures, some with 2 adults, some with only 1, and others with 2 same-sex partners. The net result is that there's no longer a need to marry in order to raise a family. There has also been a rise in secularism. Religious beliefs and doctrines had a powerful influence on how people thought and acted before the last few decades.